Hi guys, welcome back to the Drive Life channel, and in today's video we're going to be talking about front wheel drive cars. So I was walking up the driveway the other day, and I noticed that pretty much all of our cars are front wheel drive now. Obviously we've got the Volvo here, which is front wheel drive, we've got the Mercedes A-Class, we've got the Golf, and we've got the Volkswagen Polo. And I'm counting the X3 because the X-Drive system in this is actually a front-wheel drive biased one. So essentially the front wheels pull the car along until they slip when the back wheels start coming in. So they're essentially all front-wheel drive cars to some extent, and I wanted to sort of talk about why that is and why the car industry in general is going towards front-wheel drive cars. So let's get into it. So front-wheel drive and rear-wheel drive has sort of been an age-old battle in cars. The first cars were front-wheel drive purely because they had an engine in the front which would then drive the wheels directly underneath it by a belt or a chain. People soon started to realise that rear-wheel drive cars tended to handle better purely because there's less stress on the front wheels. So if you can imagine, this car puts out 245 horsepower. If you're trying to put down all of that horsepower whilst turning, the front wheels are definitely going to get overloaded. There's no doubt about it. You can have the best tyre on there, but the laws of physics will mean that as the tyre is trying to pull the car along and turn at the same time, it's going to lose traction in one of the two areas, and you sort of get a lackluster driving sensation and a lackluster performance. So what companies like BMW did, Mercedes, they opted for a rear-wheel drive just to get that balance better, and that's essentially the main reason people like rear-wheel drive cars over front-wheel drive cars. However, recently manufacturers are turning more and more to front-wheel drive. BMW dropped the rear-wheel drive 1 Series in favour for front-wheel drive, and essentially what they said the reason was behind it was the fact that they did a survey and asked all of the sort of 1 Series owners what whether it mattered or whether they knew whether their car was front-wheel drive or rear-wheel drive, and most BMW 1 Series owners didn't even know their car was rear-wheel drive. And for BMW, it made a lot of sense to then go to a front-wheel drive setup, because essentially if you go rear-wheel drive, you lose a number of things which make your car essentially less desirable. First of all, you have to fund you essentially have to build in a drive shaft that goes all the way to the rear of the car. Now what this does is it intrudes in space. So for example, in the back of this car here, you do have a slightly small tunnel, but that's because this car is built on a chassis that runs all-wheel drive cars. Essentially, front-wheel drive cars don't have this hump here, so they are essentially cheaper to make, cheaper to manufacture, and also they offer better rear legroom. Also, what it does mean is that you can mount the engine transversely, which means that the engine sort of goes that way rather than that way, and what that does is it saves space at the front and means that they can make the passenger compartment larger as well, which is essentially what BMW have done. They've made the car a much more spacious inside and practical vehicle by losing the rear-wheel drive. Also, there's space taken up in the back by having to have a differential in the back, whereas a front-wheel drive car has something called a Transaxle, which is essentially a differential that's built into the drive train. Essentially, it's a bit complicated, but essentially it does its thing straight away. And what manufacturers are starting to do now, which making front-wheel drive cars even more popular, is they're putting limited slip differentials in, which essentially means where back in the day front-wheel drive cars would lose grip, the differential essentially manages the power between the two wheels much better and gives it to the wheel with the most grip, which essentially makes the car handle better. It's getting quite scientific, this video, and it wasn't the plan, but basically, yeah, it's front-wheel drive has evolved in such a way that it's actually overtaking rear-wheel drive in terms of what it offers and the cost that it costs to maintain or sort of make. So manufacturing costs and practicality, unfortunately, are making rear-wheel drive cars vanish. Don't get me wrong, all-wheel drive appears to still be here to stay. It is sort of a lavish option. Most cars don't come as four-wheel drives. It's just sort of the sad fact of it. Like I said, because it's cheaper to do a front-wheel drive car. You don't have to worry about drive shafts that go the length of the car or anything like that. And yeah, so that was just a quick video, guys, to explain why people are going front-wheel drive over rear-wheel drive. To be honest, as a rear-wheel drive car owner before this with my BMW, I genuinely felt that rear-wheel drive was better than front-wheel drive. My car before that was the MX-5, which again was rear-wheel drive, and before that I'd only driven my Polo, which was a 1998 Volkswagen Polo, which of course was front-wheel drive. So that wasn't really the best example of front-wheel drive from that point of view. But as I've sort of got older and I've driven more front-wheel drive cars, you don't tend to really notice the difference. Granted, you can't do power slides and everything like that, but day-to-day driving that everyone does, front-wheel drive doesn't matter. It's sort of the preferred option. So yeah, that's just sort of my take on it, and sort of the explanation as to what front-wheel drive can provide nowadays for manufacturers. So yeah, thanks for watching, guys. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe. I went rambling a bit on that video, and I will see you in the next video. Make sure you take a look at the Drive Life store as well. Links in the description below. Cheers.